You know that specific feeling? It's usually around 7:30 on a Tuesday night.
Right after dinner.
Yeah, exactly. You've had a long day at work, you finally wrestle dinner onto the table, you sit down on the couch, pick up your phone, and there it is.
The badge of doom.
The badge of doom. It's that little red circle on your messaging app, and it just says 47 unread messages.
And it triggers this very specific spike of panic.
It really does. It's this weird mix of, oh, hey, I'm popular, and oh, no, I'm completely drowning.
Right, because the feeling is basically, I'm already behind. I've missed the joke. I missed whatever the plan was, and now I actually have to work, literally do cognitive labor just to catch up on my leisure time.
Yes, that is the perfect definition of group chat fatigue. And honestly, I think it's basically the universal modern condition right now. But here's why we are doing a deep dive into it today. We aren't just going to sit here and complain about annoying notifications.
No, we actually got our hands on a really fascinating stack of internal documents.
Right. It's from an organization called the Blossom Society, or TBS for short. And this isn't just a basic community guideline PDF or some generic blog post about doing a digital detox.
It's a high-level strategic stack. We are looking at strategy emails between their CEO and their head of coaching, a very detailed psychological impact report from an external consulting psychologist, and their internal joint memo on community design.
And what struck me immediately when looking through these sources is that they treat exhaustion, this group chat fatigue, not as the user error. They don't say, oh, you're just bad at managing your time. They treat it as a design flaw.
That is the entire core thesis of this stack. They are actively trying to solve the psychology behind what they call social attentional demand.
Which sounds incredibly expensive. Social attentional demand.
It sounds super technical, I know, but it's actually a deeply practical concept. It measures the hidden cost your brain pays just to belong to a group. And the documents argue that right now, for most of us, that cost is just way too high.
So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack their strategy for what they call community pacing by design. We're going to look at why those constant pings actually hurt your nervous system and how TBS is trying to engineer a shift from this always-on anxiety to something they call consent with attention.
And I think we really need to start with the problem itself, because that external psychologist's report in the stack was incredibly validating to read. It talks about the double edge of group chats.
Right, this is the central paradox we are all kind of trapped in right now.
On one side, group chats are critical social infrastructure. Especially in a lonely world, they stabilize our sense of belonging. They're the place where you feel like you have a crew, you have a support network.
It's like having a cocktail party in your pocket that is just always open.
Exactly. But the flip side of that is, because it is always open, it creates a near continuous demand on your attention. And the report makes a really brilliant distinction here. There is information overload, which we all know. That's just having way too much stuff to read.
The giant wall of text. The too long didn't read situation.
But then there is communication overload. And this is the subtle killer. It is not just about the volume of words you have to read. It's the expectation of reciprocity.
Oh, wow.
It's the feeling of, I don't just have to read this, I have to perform, I have to reply. Because if I don't, I'm being rude, I'm ignoring my friends.
That's the part that really gets me. It's the social pressure, the guilt of leaving someone on read. But the psychologist actually goes deeper into the brain science of this, and they use a term I had never heard before. Context reconstruction.
Yes.
Can we break that down? Because reading that was a massive light bulb moment for me.
It's a crucial concept if you want to understand why you feel completely exhausted after looking at your phone for just 5 minutes. Think about it this way. When you're in a physical room with your friends, the context is continuous.
Right, you're just there.
You hear the build-up to the joke, you see their facial expressions, you hear the tone of voice. You are completely in the flow of the conversation.
You're riding the wave.
Right. But when you open a group chat with 47 unread messages, you are effectively walking into a crowded room an hour late, completely blindfolded. You aren't just reading text, your brain is frantically doing detective work.
Trying to piece it all together.
Exactly. You're constantly asking yourself, wait, who is talking to who? Is this sarcasm? Are they fighting right now? Does this impact me? Did I miss the start time for dinner?
So it's not actually reading, it's rapid-fire task switching.
It is incredibly heavy cognitive load. You have to reconstruct the reality of the room from these tiny, disjointed snippets of text, usually reading them out of order, and often while 3 other chat threads are pinging you at the exact same time.
The documents point out that we completely overlook the technical mismatch here. Messaging feels like a conversation, We treat it like speech, but it lacks what they call co-presence.
Yes, co-presence,
Yeah.
meaning the physical, nonverbal stuff.
Right, like the nods, the winks, the eye contact.
Exactly. In a physical room, I can just nod at you while you're talking. That nod says, I am here, I am listening, I support you. And it costs me absolutely zero energy. But in a group chat, if I don't type words, I am totally invisible. To exist in that space, I have to generate content.
Which leads perfectly into what the report calls cognitive entrapment.
Yes. This is where you stay engaged in the chat even when you're exhausted. You just keep typing. And not because you actually have something valuable to say, but because you're desperately trying to regain control of the context.
Because you don't want to be misunderstood.
Right. You clarify, which adds more words, which just creates more noise for everyone else to reconstruct.
It's a vicious cycle. Everyone is typing frantically just to prove they're listening, which creates so much noise that nobody can actually listen.
Precisely. And this connects directly to a psychological concept they call belonging threat. Now, we talk about FOMO all the time, fear of missing out. But usually we treat FOMO casually, like, oh man, I missed a really fun party. But this report argues that the FOMO in group chats is much deeper and much darker. It's rooted in uncertainty. The fear isn't missing the event. The fear is, will I miss the exact moment I become known?
That specific phrase hit me so hard when I was reading the sources, the moment I become known.
It's totally primal. It's the fear that the group is bonding and inside jokes are forming right now, and they're creating a new shared language that you won't speak. That uncertainty drives checking behaviors. You check your phone not because you actually want to talk, but just to reduce the anxiety of not knowing what's happening.
And the report says this tips directly into doom scrolling, which honestly, I usually associate doom scrolling with reading terrible news about the economy or global politics, but here they are using it to describe scrolling endlessly through a chat about brunch plans.
Because it's the exact same neurological mechanism. You are scrolling to soothe your nervous system, but paradoxically, the more you scroll, the more you realize how much you actually missed and the further behind you feel. It fuels the exact anxiety it's trying to cure.
Okay, so we've clearly established that this environment is structurally tough for everyone. But the Blossom Society documents highlight one specific type of user who gets absolutely crushed by this dynamic: the newcomer.
The newcomer's dilemma. This was honestly my favorite part of the consultant's analysis because it breaks down the invisible labor of joining a new group. When you join a lifestyle community or a new Discord server or even a new Slack channel at your job, you aren't just hanging out. You are simultaneously performing 3 complex psychological tasks.
Let's list those out because I think everyone listening will immediately recognize this feeling. Task 1.
Orientation. This is the basic logistics. Where is the bathroom? What are the rules here? Is this channel for funny memes or serious questions? How do I thread a reply properly?
Okay, so that's the mechanical stuff. What is task 2?
Belonging. This is social mapping. You are actively trying to figure out who the regulars are, who holds the actual power here, who is the queen bee, what topics are safe to joke about, who gets laughed at versus who gets laughed with.
That sounds exhausting already. And task 3?
Self-presentation. How do I become visible in this group without looking incredibly needy?
Oh, that is such a tightrope walk. You want to say, hey, I'm here, I'm cool, include me, but you are terrified of being that person who posts 5 times in a row and gets absolutely 0 replies.
And this leads directly to a phenomenon the consultant calls the status treadmill. Imagine you join a new chat. You look at the feed and you see a core group of maybe 5 people who are just posting constantly. They reply to everything, they send GIFs, they dominate the entire screen.
Right, the power users, the really loud minority.
But as a newcomer, you don't actually know they are a minority. You mistakenly view that sheer volume of posting as the standard of acceptance. You think, to be accepted in this group, I must post at this exact speed.
You think that's the literal price of admission to the community?
Exactly. So the psychological result is this belief, if I don't post, I don't exist. It drives performance instead of genuine connection. You aren't sharing because you have a profound thought. You're just sharing to prove you are physically present.
It's like standing in a crowded room and just waving your arms around so people don't bump into you.
And the consultant defines this as social evaluation pressure. You are constantly wondering how you are being perceived based entirely on your digital footprint. It is completely exhausting.
So we have this digital environment that is structurally designed to fry our nerves. But what I really appreciate about this deep dive into the TPS sources is that they didn't just admire the problem, they actually mobilized to fix it. The head of coaching sent a great email outlining a solution they call the coping playbook.
I loved this document because it shifts the entire focus. Usually, communities try to solve chat fatigue with rigid rules. Don't post after 10 p.m., no talking about politics. But this playbook focuses purely on user skills. It shifts from demanding compliance to building capability.
And they identify 4 specific skills: pace, purpose, position, and sense-making. I really want to go through these because I think you can use these skills today, even if you aren't part of this specific Blossom Society community.
Absolutely. These are essentially survival skills for the digital age.
Let's start with skill 1, which is pace. This is all about controlling your exposure.
The core idea here is to mute with intent. Now think about it. When you mute a person or a group chat right now, how does it usually feel?
It feels like an insult.
Oh.
Honestly, it feels like I'm saying, you're annoying, I don't like you, please go away. I always feel a little guilty doing it.
Exactly. We inherently view muting as a form of social rejection. But the playbook totally reframes it. They say muting isn't a rejection, it's a boundary. The advice is to use planned check-ins. So instead of just grazing on the chat all day long and constantly breaking your focus, you make a decision. You say, I will check this chat at 12:30 and again at 7:30.
And they pair that with something called the catch-up limit. This one honestly blew my mind because it goes against every single digital instinct I have.
It is so simple, but so incredibly hard to actually execute. The advice is just this: decide you're only going to scroll back 30 messages.
30. That's it. Even if there are 200 unread messages waiting for me.
That is it, just 30. The report argues that scrolling back anything more than that is just anxiety management disguised as responsibility. You tell yourself you're being a good community member by diligently reading every single word, but you really aren't. You do not need to read 200 messages about someone's lunch or their cat to be a good friend.
That is so liberating, just letting it go. But, and I know everyone is thinking this, what if I miss something genuinely important?
That is the core fear, right? But their logic is very sound. If it is truly important, it will come back around, or someone will directly tag you. If it's just random banter, you didn't need to read it anyway.
Okay, that brings us to skill 2, purpose.
This is about clearly separating logistics from social interaction. Newcomers get this confused all the time. They try to have these deep, vulnerable bonding moments in a chat channel that is really just meant for organizing a dinner reservation.
You see this happen all the time. Someone pours their absolute heart out in the wrong channel, like the announcements reply thread, and they just get a single thumbs-up reaction, and it feels completely devastating.
It feels like the whole room just went freezing cold.
Right.
So the skill is recognizing what mode the chat is in. Logistics mode means you just check the pinned messages for data. Social mode means you engage, but lightly. Do not treat the general group chat as your primary route to deep soul connection. It is way too chaotic an environment for that.
Skill 3 is honestly my favorite. They call it position, or more specifically, value first micro-participation, which is definitely a mouthful, but the actual concept is genius.
It perfectly answers that newcomer's dilemma we talked about, the desire to be seen without being annoying. The tactic is incredibly simple. Use reactions. Dropping a heart or a thumbs up emoji signals, I am here and I see you. But it doesn't demand that anyone else read a new message. It doesn't add to the scroll depth.
It's physical presence without the digital noise.
Yeah.
It's the equivalent of the nod.
Yes. And when you do finally decide to post, their rule is make one small, genuinely helpful contribution per week. Maybe you just answer a newcomer's question about the dress code for an event. The document explicitly says helpful is greater than witty.
Oh, that definitely hits my ego a bit. Because I always want to be the funny one. I want to drop the perfect GIF that gets 10 crying, laughing emojis.
We all do. We all desperately want the dopamine hit of the laugh. But trying to be the funniest person in a crowded digital room is high risk and high effort. Being the person who simply knows what time the doors open, that is low risk and high value. It anchors your position in the group as someone reliable rather than just someone who is loud.
That is such a profound shift in mindset. Moving from look at me to here is something useful. And finally, that brings us to skill 4, sense making.
This skill is all about stopping the mind reading. Because group chats lack those physical co-presence cues we talked about, we start making up stories in our heads. They didn't reply to my joke, so they must hate me. They read my message but didn't type anything back, so they're definitely judging me.
When in reality, they just have the notifications turned off. Or they're asleep, or they're driving a car.
Exactly. The core skill here is reframing silence. Silence in a group chat does not equal rejection. And this is a really big one. Fast posters are not necessarily in charge. They're usually just people with more free time or less impulse control.
I seriously need to tattoo that on my forehead. Fast posters are not in charge.
It is a crucial reframe. It entirely stops you from feeling subordinate or lesser than just because you type slower or check your phone less often.
So those are the 4 coping skills for the individual users. But what makes this deep dive into the Blossom Society really special is that the leadership team, the CEO and the COO, didn't just write a playbook and say, okay, let the users figure it out on their own. They realized the product architecture itself actually had to change.
This is the system design phase. And honestly, for anyone listening who runs a community or a Slack workspace or even just manages a massive family group chat, this is pure gold. The C-suite emails discuss something they call platform hygiene. They basically realize that if you design a building to be inherently noisy and echoey, you cannot blame the people inside for shouting.
So what did they actually change in the software architecture to fix this?
They moved to structurally engineer consent with attention. First, they completely restructured the types of chats available. They introduced something called a front gate.
Which is essentially just a read-only channel for major announcements, right?
Yes. But think about why that matters psychologically. It creates a perfect signal-to-noise filter. If you only have the energy to look at one thing today, you just look at the front gate. It entirely removes the anxiety that you are missing something vital that got buried under 200 messages of random chatter. It separates the must-knows from the nice-to-knows.
It essentially creates a safe zone.
Exactly. Then they introduced timeboxed chats. These are chat rooms created for specific events, say a weekend retreat, that automatically open and close at specific times.
Yeah.
And this is the absolute key design choice. They're default muted.
Default muted. That is so radical for a tech platform. Usually every single app is set to ping you constantly, unless you actively dig into the settings to stop it.
Correct. TBS flips the script completely. Usually you have to opt out of the noise. Here, you have to consciously opt in. The system respects your attention by default. If you aren't going to that specific weekend event, you never even see the red notification dot.
They also mentioned something in the memo called slow chats, spaces where a 24 to 72-hour response lag is the explicit accepted norm.
I love the slow chat concept. It completely kills immediacy pressure. If everybody in the channel knows a reply might take 3 days, nobody is sitting there refreshing their screen wondering why they are being ignored. It completely changes the texture of the digital conversation. It goes from a frantic ping-pong match to something more like sending letters. It slows the entire heartbeat of the community down.
And to help with that lingering fear of missing out, they introduced built-in summaries.
Right. Weekly what you missed digests. This creates a structural safety net. You don't ever have to doom scroll the chat because you know the system itself will catch you up on Sunday morning. It massively lowers the cognitive cost of simply stepping away from your phone.
I also noticed a really interesting email thread from their marketing director regarding the language they use. She talks about adopting the sovereign stance. It sounded almost political, but in a very personal, individual way.
It is a core brand value for them. Their motto is, "Women are sovereign." And the marketing director argues this sovereignty must apply to their digital attention, too. Sovereignty isn't just about your body or your life choices. It's about having total ownership over your pacing and your focus.
The examples of the microcopy they use in the app were so good. Things like, no one owes real-time replies, and muted doesn't mean disconnected.
That specific phrase is so powerful. Muted doesn't mean disconnected. It structurally validates that you can still be a deeply valued member of the community without having a wire hooked directly into your brain 24/7. It gives you explicit permission to be a low-volume citizen.
And the head of coaching made a really sharp point about incentives in that same thread. If you give users digital badges for posting 1,000 times, you're going to get 1,000 pieces of absolute junk.
Exactly. You get exactly what you measure. If a platform rewards volume, the platform gets noise. So TBS shifted their system to reward conduct. They reward being helpful, being respectful, answering a newcomer's question. They don't reward volume. They want to reinforce the quality of the contribution, not the quantity of the noise.
Now, despite all this deep focus on psychology and protecting nervous systems, there was a very clear, almost sharp boundary drawn in these executive emails. They are absolutely terrified of becoming a mental health platform.
And it's a completely valid concern. The leadership team is very explicit in the joint memo. We are a lifestyle community. We are not a clinical space. They know that if they start using clinical language, they take on a legal and moral liability they simply cannot handle, and they promise a medical solution they cannot actually deliver.
The marketing director calls it language discipline.
Right. They explicitly forbid their community managers from using terms like anxiety disorders or trauma or addiction in their official copy. They never want to imply they are diagnosing or treating a medical condition.
Instead, they intentionally use coaching language. Words like overwhelm, focus, pacing, clarity.
It is a subtle shift, but an incredibly important distinction. The goal isn't to fix the user's underlying mental health. The goal is just to design a garden where the environment itself doesn't actively punish you for stepping away. They want to prevent the digital harm, not treat the psychological injury.
It's about being a calm, coaching-led alternative space, rather than trying to run an unlicensed group therapy session.
Exactly. And frankly, that is exactly what makes this TBS strategy so universally applicable to anyone listening right now. You do not need to be a licensed therapist to realize that your family group chat is making you miserable. You just need to realize that the structural design of that digital space is working against your brain.
So let's bring this all home. What does this deep dive mean for you? For the person listening right now who still has that glaring red badge on their phone screen and feels that little twinge of guilt every time they look at it?
It means we desperately need to stop treating always-on availability as a moral virtue. The sources strongly suggest we need to start viewing our digital boundaries not as being antisocial, but as a vital form of consent.
Consent with attention.
Yes. Think about it this way. When I send you a text message, I am making a demand. I am actively asking for your attention. You have the absolute right to grant that attention on your own terms and at your own pace. You are not obligated to open the door the exact second I knock.
I really love that framing. It takes the power completely back. It's not about being bad at friendship. It's about being really good at boundaries.
And practically speaking, it means actually adopting that coping playbook in your daily life.
Right. Pace, purpose, position, and sense-making.
And you can start with pace today.
Which brings us perfectly to our challenge for the listeners.
Yeah.
I want you to try the catch-up limit today. The next time you open that specific group chat, you know, the one that always stresses you out, I want you to scroll back exactly 30 messages. No more.
Don't read the whole history. Don't even look at the timestamps. Just read the last 30 bubbles.
If you miss something truly vital, someone will tag you.
And if they don't tag you, it probably wasn't that vital to begin with. It was just chatter. It was just extra context that your brain does not need to reconstruct.
Just let it go.
You know, spending time with these documents raises a really provocative question for me to end on. If our digital spaces were designed exactly like our physical rooms, would we ever tolerate a room where everyone is shouting at each other 24/7?
Absolutely not. We'd walk right out the door. We'd say it was an absolute nightmare.
We would call it chaotic, and we'd call it incredibly rude. Yet, purely because it happens on a glass screen, we tolerate it. We let that shouting live right in our pockets. So maybe it is time we started treating our digital living rooms with the exact same standards of respect and quiet that we apply to our physical living rooms.
Belonging shouldn't cost you your nervous system.
Yeah.
I think that is the ultimate bottom line here.
It really shouldn't.
Thank you so much for taking this deep dive into the sources with us. Go mute those noisy chats with intent. And seriously, do not feel guilty about it. We will catch you on the next deep dive.